Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Today's video is regarding the genealogy of morals and the slave morality, the master morality, employment and entrepreneurship. So the whole point is here we have, well, the subtitle of the book by Nietzsche, kind of one of the most famous philosophers in recent times, is a polemic. Now, I'll be completely frank, completely honest with you. I don't actually know 100% what that word means, so I'm gonna have to look it up when I finish this video, but that's part of what we're all about. We're not pretending. I'm now crossing the road as a car approaches, so I'm gonna speed walk. We're not pretending to know everything, and it's a great way to learn when people comment down below and bring their opinion to the dialogue. Then we learn and we grow. So nonetheless, I believe it's a dichotomy, or it's a bilateral it's a two-pronged situation, because the reason why I was thinking about this, I was listening to Grant Cardone, you're in the Cardone zone, 100x your life, this kind of, now many people will call him out and say that in many ways he's just another one of these financial scammy gurus online. But at the same time, when somebody has, by all intents and purposes, loads of money and a mindset which is different to the masses, I think it's something that's reasonable to listen to. So I've got about 10 minutes before I need to get to my office, so a couple of loops round St John's Gardens in Castlefield, Deansgate, Manchester, and let's get right into it. So my point really being that what Grant Cardone says, and then this seeps into the kind of moral outlook that people have as a consequence. On one hand, you have the working class, maybe even middle class, the privileged working class, who are basically employees, and they get paid via paycheck. Of course, they have income and expenditures. And I mean, another fellow who talks about this is Robert Kiyosaki. So on one hand, you have your income, on the other hand, you have your expenditures. And many people, okay, they might save some money during that process, stacking up pennies, but to what avail? Do they have assets? Is it anything that's going to drastically change their life long term? There seems to be, as Nietzsche puts it, a raisonnement, a resentment around people who have escaped this system, escaped the matrix, as yours truly says. We won't say his name because he has his own problems that stress people out. But my point is that, therefore, because we have these two general classes of people, there is the morality seeps in. So you have the master morality as one of ambition, and the slave morality sees that ambition as greed. So it's very interesting, isn't it? Two sides to the same coin. You have in one camp, there is a sense of injustice. And this is really what I wanted to get into. Why people, and then the concept of how morality can be passed down because of generation after generation of either working class or quote unquote upper class. So it's fascinating because it's the whole concept of delayed gratification, I guess. People, when they live a lifestyle that is, they're on the grind, they kind of feel justified to spend money on nice clothes, on pretending to look a certain way to get your car or your watch or your home. It's beyond your means. You're leasing it, you're loaning it, you're borrowing money, you're you're bringing in £5,000 a month, but you're spending £6,000 a month, subhanAllah. So ultimately the aim here is to be minimalist, to pull right back, to live within your means, and realize that, look, if Allah wanted you to have great amounts of wealth, then you could have quite easily been born into great amounts of wealth. So it's about a balance. It's working hard, it's saving money, it's putting all your ducks in a row so that you're able to support your family in the long term. Because, you know, it's when compared to people on the kind of breadline living in poverty, to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds to be able to support your children in education and in marriage and with their children and getting a home and these kind of things, that's massive. But I've experienced it, you know, myself, anecdotally. When people get much more than 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, I argue, what benefit does that really bring them? So that's what I wanted to jump on and talk about there, is that we have kind of it's a mindset which is also, you know, part of our moral structure. Now, obviously, in our tradition, we believe that there's an objective moral framework, and I want to delve into this in more depth in the future, but I think I need a pen and paper and more time to think about it. There is an objective moral framework, but the way that we can interpret life to almost as a survival mechanism, there is something that I find fascinating about Nietzsche's genealogy of morality. And as anybody knows, genealogy is almost like, as we have here with these big beautiful trees, the genealogy is like a family tree. So it's speaking about not history in a broad context, but a more specific historical root system of how we have come to form the moral basis. And it also in kind of the more Western canon, that is to say that we have a Judeo-Christian in European moral framework. And obviously I find that, you know, it's interesting because Islam really is another component of that. Almost, you have the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the final testament, and Nietzsche doesn't really consider Islam, and so I think there's room there for, you know, an essay or two, but like I say, I need to spend more time delving into it. So what's the main points I wanted to talk about? It was really about the issue of employment versus entrepreneurship, the issue of the master morality versus slave morality. One sees their position as just because they have everything and they have the ability to affect society at large, of course, build grand buildings and build hospitals and push society forward, albeit through a mechanism of, I don't want to say oppression, but of control, and it can be very sticky territory. Now, on the other side, the slave feels there's an injustice, and so they need a conceptualization of reality that allows them to plod along without revolution. Something that also I saw just the other day, which I found fascinating, that just went right over my head. The idea of a revolution, when something, you know, how many revolutions, it's almost like a flip. If you have like I'm getting a call from my manager, so I'm going to start walking back to the office. But I guess the main thing that I wanted to discuss is when it comes to the system we live in now. Obviously, in the kind of developed Western world, we don't have the same, on the surface, we don't have the same structure as before in relation to slavery. All great civilizations of the past were built upon slave labor, effectively. And there's always been a hierarchy, whether it's a caste system, a class system, something that separates people, because ultimately, you know, that kind of fine point equality wouldn't even be just, because why should somebody who contributes more to society be rewarded less, and why should somebody who contributes less to society be rewarded more? So I do understand that it makes sense that there are people of varying quality, so to speak. Now, of course, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that it's not an ethnicity-based thing, it's not a race-based thing. The white person has no superiority over the non-white person, and the Arab has no superiority over the non-Arab, but in actions and righteousness and impact. So my main point is that there has to be a narrative. The reason why people don't talk about, you know, how you can not evade taxes, but avoid taxes legally within the system like all of the rich people do. The reason why people are not, they lack financial literacy is because it's not taught in schools, and generally the school system is somewhat of a factory, churning people out ready for the workforce. Okay, albeit maybe via university, which is now a new financial institution that, you know, it's not the old days where the top people went to university. It's almost just like an extension of school now, except from you getting to £50,000 worth of debt. So my point is that in many ways, especially the old American dream and the way things used to be 50 years ago, is that people could live with it because they could still have a couple of nice holidays, they could still buy their car, they could still have security and prosperity for their families. But in recent times, with the disparity of wealth increasing dramatically and people struggling more than ever, cost of living crisis, etc., then really we're returning back to an older system where, by all intents and purposes, we have a slave class. Now they pay, you know, relatively the most tax, not literally. I know, of course, that something like 40% of tax comes from the top 1%. So it's not to say at any point then literally they do, but relatively. So why are we not teaching people about limited companies and the tax benefits of, you know, having your own company? Obviously the system prefers employers to employees because the employers are positively affecting the economy in a far greater way. So anyway, it was really just a dead quick one to mention some musing that I've been having in my brain, which is focused around the difference between, you know, the slave mind and the mastermind, the difference between a entrepreneur and somebody who, you know, sort of grabs life by the horns, and an employee, and it's a far more passive role. And really all of the things related to that, society at large, sociology, I guess ultimately, I mean, just look at many other organisms, ants, bees, within a structure. Again, it goes back to Pareto's law that there's always going to be a majority of people who are kind of just the worker bees. The issue comes when the worker bees have to survive. They have resentment, but they have no ability. Maybe they have some desire, but they have no ability to actually positively affect or change their predicament. And so they kind of feel stuck, they feel trapped. And yeah, this is something that I think is fascinating. And I have now kind of finished what I wanted to say. This, for me, is a far better topic to write about, to start to peel apart all these ideas. But thanks so much for listening. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Always remember, big up your good selves. Until next time, good folk. Auf Wiedersehen.